kidding. But I do want to start with prayer. Father God, we thank you for this chance to meet together with our fellow brothers and sisters for your glory, and to learn about you and your ways, so that way we can do those things, not just be hearers, but to be good examples of you on this earth. We ask this in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. So when I was writing this, it was not canceled yet, but it wasn't snowing either. So God kind of gave me this analogy for deacons for sure, but for most people that minister in the same church, it's kind of like, you see the city plows. They generally will run multiples, and what it is, you have the first one kind of breaking it open, the one right on the next side of it, just kind of edging it out, getting the sides on, and then wash, rinse, and repeat. So I kind of was thinking about that, because I was like, man, there's a lot of things here that are just so similar to Pastor. I don't know if it's I don't know. I want to make sure when you guys come here and it's 8 degrees outside and it's worth your time. But we're just going to kind of cut in a little bit as we go. So thank you, Pastor, for breaking the trail open. So when I was asking God what to talk about, like, same thing. This might be something that we regularly know, but to inspire and to just, rekindle the fire. He kind of gave me this analogy and the vision of it, where you see a lot of pastors or preachers talk about when people get baptized, they go down, but then they're kind of like this. They don't really, the wallet doesn't go with them, with their submission. It's separate from them. And thankfully this is not the case in this church. But the sad part of it is true. You hear a lot about this tithing under law and over the law and in between the law. I don't really get into too much of it. All I know is I remember when Pastor first talked about tithing and offering. We didn't have anything. It was the tail end of the recession. Me and my wife, like I said, we didn't have very much anything. I lived more towards South Haven, Covert side, and I would bike here. And we named that bike. It was an old Schwinn bike with the tires about this big, and it was not a refreshed or refurbished version of that bike. So we actually named it Mick Rattles, and I rode it to, wish I wrote it, to McDonald's. So, and after that, I would work and pick up McBlueberries, and that was it. I mean, we weren't having anything, but he preached that, and actually, I had no intentions of doing it, but let's go to Malachi 3:10, 11, and 12 for just a refreshment. Can't beat the word of the God that we serve. And you can put it up there too, Miss Williams or Mr. Williams. So Malachi 3:10, 11, 12, we're all familiar with it. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and prove me now by it, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open up the windows of heaven for you and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive. I don't know about law or over the law, but we heard that word and I stood on it, and God took it from there. And side note, Mick Rattles and McBlueberries does not spell check very well on Word, so I had to fought that. But one gentleman, Derek Prince, brought this up, and this is just kind of make your heart more into tithing and offering, because you're not doing this to get something, though you do. It is a heart. So they say, that is under the law. We're not under the law. Well, we're under grace. We know this for sure. So what one gentleman says, shouldn't you be more gracious then? If God's done nothing but more since the law, wouldn't you do more? So not as a requirement, but man, 10%, maybe you should jump it up then. God literally did everything and gave us everything from there. And you'll see in this church quite often, people will start out not just tithing, but this is usually an example of it. And it's like God will open up that window and he'll turn that faucet on, and it's flowing to them. And before it gets to them, they've already shut down their heart on it. They stop listening. They're already on their way out, and then they'll leave. And I believe that they sowed into God and his kingdom and his people, and that flow is still coming to them. So as they're going, they're actually blessed. And they can even ride those blessings on for months or years, and then they'll fall again, and then they'll come back. You have to give God more time. And that's the message, or the title of my exhortation is Time and Service with Your Soul. So I believe that our perception of time is so limited because we're such a young creation. So Peter knew this and told us, if you guys want to go to 2 Peter 3:8, that's 2 Peter 3:8. He says, "Nevertheless, do not let this one fact escape you, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day." So if you guys know me, I really like to get nitty-gritty with the details. So one day in the Lord is 1,000th of a second. That's .001, I think it was. And you can go on from there. That's intensely, give God some time. That's a second to him. It's kind of like how we can do, I kind of made a note here with the kids, 2 weeks away from Christmas. Oh, that's forever. You know what I mean? It's just a few more days. This is gonna be done with, and this is gonna be set right. I know that we're all facing something. It says in the Bible that don't think it's strange when we go through hard times. We're all experiencing it. Give God some time. Mama told me this, and I will never forget it, so thank you. But she said, God can do a lot in a day. And me and Sarah would say that every single day. It's like, God can do a lot in a day. It's nothing wrong with having hope that's true. And I like to do pairs of scriptures. That's what you're supposed to do. In 1 Samuel 2:8. So again, I like going there. If you can put it up on the screen, Mr. Darren. That's 1 Samuel 2:8. I love this. Again, this is Amplified Classic, so it'll read differently. But he raises up the poor out of the dust and lifts up the needy from the ash heap. Another version, which I like more, just out of the dunghill, which is where I felt like I was at. To make them sit with the nobles and inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. We pray, and I believe that God answers prayers when they're right, and for the right reason, for wisdom on how to reach this city. And it's always as it's written. This city is stricken with poverty and drugs. This is the answer. And I also like 1 Samuel 2:9 as well too. But he will guard his feet of his godly ones, but the wicked shall be silenced and perish in darkness. For by the strength shall no man prevail. So I love that one. So if you want to serve God, you have to bring something to him and with him. For example, if I was going to go help out Darren and I didn't even bring a chainsaw to a job site, he's going to be, I don't know what you're going to do here. Sit and look pretty. So I do believe that money is one of the things that we can use as a tool to serve him with, to help out people. People have ran this in a ditch for sure, but I tell you what, I call it a refreshment. We've been blessed enough to have those refreshings where I was like, oh, this is horrible. And someone comes by and buys me a meal or buys me a tool or something like that, and it's wonderful. You can use it as a tool to serve God. Now, God brought me back to the example of with that wallet when someone went down. Again, this is them separating themselves. But he said also to you, what's with your hand as well? And he said it's your wallet or your watch. Do you give God your time? I'm not just talking about Sundays. It seems like it's hard enough on Sundays. But outside of that, where's your heart lying? Do you give your time to God? So I'd like to go to an example in the Old Testament, which is supposed to be examples of how to follow these things. So we're going to go to 2 Kings 4:8. And I believe that these are examples of what happens when you give God your time and your money. So that's 2 Kings 4:8. So one day Elijah went on to Shunem, where a rich and influential woman lived. I love to stop here. They can say whatever they want about God being, I don't know what he saw, misogynistic or whatever. He talks about some lovely women in the Bible. A rich and influential woman, that means that she was a pillar in the community probably. She helped out people and people thought good of her. She insisted on the man of God eating a meal with him, and afterwards, when he passed by, he would stop there for a meal. And she said to her husband, "Behold now, I perceive that this is a holy man, a man of God who passes by continually. Let us make a small chamber on the housetop and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, furnishing it so we can go up there and rest." So not only is this an addition, but they're taking time out of their day-to-day stuff when he does come by. So this is time, money, resources. Elijah had to be tired. He needed rest. This is a need, and she perceived this. So this isn't Elijah telling her. This is something that she just thought about. She's like, I think he's a man of God, and I'm going to do this. She was led by God, I believe. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had family members live with me before, and that's a big ask. You really need to be led by God. You lose your privacy. I said the way of life sometimes. I mean, this is Elijah. I mean, you really got to make sure you dust, get everything clean and polished then. But she did this. So what would you say to your schedule for God, for your work, your family, your hobbies? Because I believe that when you're fully submitted, your work, your family, your hobbies are all subject to the leading of God, what you feel in your heart. Have you ever told work no? I feel like, and I'm not just talking pastor call, the prayer meeting, or a service, just saying I feel like God wants me to do this. Or telling a family member no. I mean, you got a family feud right there to tell them you're not going to go to Thanksgiving. But if you're led by God and you are truly God, if your time is now God's, if he's truthfully Lord, you never tell the Lord, I can't do that. No, you're not going to do that. If your time is truly God, and I believe that's what real worship is when you lay it all down onto God. This is yours. Whatever you want, I'll do it. So later on, he did say, painstakingly and reverently watched over us in this type I would call worship. And so if you want to make a note in there or hold that spot, let's go to Philippians 3:3. So Paul's telling the Philippians, for we, and this is amplified in brackets, Christians, are of the true circumcisions who worship God in spirit. So if you kind of want to dig into a word study, which I do like to do, I like to learn what God is telling us. This version of worship in Greek is latrigo. I'm sure I'm supposed to roll an R there, but pretty much what it means is that you are a servant. You're almost like a hired servant. So I'm going to read this over and over so we get this. So we as Christians are of true circumcision who serve God in the Spirit. And if you want to go into a literal, what God is literally saying from the translation, you can find it in Young's literal translation or some of the other ones. It says, for we are of the circumcision who by the Spirit are serving God. And then I, again, kind of like to back it up more. So circumcision, what is that? A lot of times we kind of misunderstand that people that are reading, or this is too, that they should know all the Old Testament back and forth. This is all they had prior to. So circumcision, we know, is the kind of the agreement deal with Abraham. And if you want to look at it, you don't have to now. Genesis 17:11 is a perfect example of what the circumcision is. It's supposed to be a sign, a symbol. The agreement was definitely there, but this is just simply a sign, like a handshake to it. So how I took it when I was reading it, and I believe that's what it was meant to be, is that for we Christians are a true sign, and you can tell this by how they service and work with God by being led by the Spirit. Does that track her? Okay, I'm just trying. This is the first time kind of diving into like this. So that's how you really tell a Christian, not just by their church attendance, but how are you truthfully serving God by the Spirit, led by the Spirit. And this is a form of worship when you do it like this. Now, I know in the past that we've gotten into will worship where we have the do's and the don'ts. This isn't this. This is being led by the Spirit. I remember when I first got saved, actually, just to be honest, I have a really good visual memory. I don't remember times and dates the best. But I remember where I'm at almost always. So I was sitting in the middle of the rows on the edge of the hallway or the aisle, and Pastor was walking out. And of course, you gotta ask Pastor every question you have, right? When you're young, so I called Pastor and I said, I want to serve God. I want to do something. He said, just keep coming to church. Just keep coming to church. I didn't realize it then. I did just shut up and listen, which I'm grateful for listening to him. What he was getting to me is if I want to serve God, I need to be built up. I need to have something to serve him with. And I'm not talking about money now. This is what it's like when you stay in a church. You do get built up. You can now serve. And I believe that this Shunammite woman was ready. She had her monies ready. She had her time ready. She was ready to give it all. We hear a lot, and it is true, That God isn't looking for skill sets, but he wants your availability.
Right.
But you still need to make sure that you're now eligible. You need to be ready to do things. Because if you're not, then you can be available. It won't matter. You need to be eligible. For example, if you're going to preach, you need to make sure that you're studying and you're staying close to God. So let's go to 2 Kings 4:13. Continuing the story with the Shunammite woman. So Elijah said, "What then is to be done for her after doing all these things for Elijah?" Gehazi answered, "She has no child and her husband is old." So later on, you'll find out that Elijah spoke over her that she would have a baby. So this is something that's almost like Abrahamic. I mean, this is a huge miracle. You couldn't pay for this. You couldn't fast for this. This is something that you did for God, and you get this reward. So imagine if you would give your time and your money what God can do with you and for other people as well. So we'll keep on reading the story, but if you really want to learn about God, and you can take this for anyone, if you want to know your your friend or anything like that, start working for your friend as a boss. You're going to learn a lot about a person by then, how they micromanage, how they don't micromanage, how they delegate, all their goods and their bads. But what you do is you do learn about them. So for this example or analogy is work with God, and you're going to learn a lot from him. This woman is amazing. She knew God. And it's just some of these Old Testament things, I'm just like, how do they know these things? Because, they knew God. Now it's awesome that we have all this, so we have no excuses anymore. So continuing on the story, so her son was in the field, and he complained about his head hurting. And he went back into the house with her and laid on her knees, and he eventually passed. And so that's in 2 Kings 4:22-3. She was ready to go to the man of God. And this is where you really learn about God, and you start seeing what you learn being put into action. And she called her husband and said, "Send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may go quickly to the man of God." And this is what I love. This is the faith that's coming out and come back again. She had no intentions of not coming back saying that her and her boys coming back. I love it. And he said, "Why go to him today?" And this is just an ignorant husband, so you women just keep on doing what you got to do. "Why go today? Your son's dead." "I don't know. Let's put two and two together. Probably going to get her son healed." So, like I said, people talk about the Bible being misogynistic. I don't think so. "It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath." And she said, and this is the faith again, "It will be all right." In multiple translations, it says peace. Pretty much shut up. It'll be fine. She spoke faith, despite even her husband, who apparently had no idea what was going on. I can't speak for what that's going on, but she didn't let that deter her. And you'll see as the story goes on that Elijah's servant went to him, put Elijah's staff on his head. That didn't heal him then. Elijah ended up going on him, laying down on him twice, and he was healed. Imagine she didn't have that close relationship with the man of God, which would represent God. She was working with God and the people of God. So not only did she get a miracle, she was able to keep her miracle. This is all just her time and her money and her heart in those things. And if we would go deeper into some of this stuff, again, I don't want to keep you guys too long. When Elijah said, "What can I do for you?" she was saying, "It's fine." She said, "I dwell with my people, they're okay." That's almost what it says, "They're okay." She said, "It's all right," or whatever. But, and he said, "Well, I know you don't have a son." And Elijah was simply saying, "I want, God's going to give you a son." And she was like, "Don't toy with me. I'm not asking for this," though she wanted it. So, continuing on with this wonderful woman, there was a famine in the land. It's like people can't get a break in this chapter. There's a famine in the land for 7 years. So 7 years of famine, they actually had to move out of that country. So now they're a foreigner in another country. They obviously are well established. It clearly tells us she was rich. So they had to leave there. But I believe, just from what I read of her past, that she knew it was going to be okay. She didn't let time get a hold of her. For 7 years, that's a long time. You can destroy a family or your business. That's a long time. I remember when I first got saved and I relapsed a couple times, and then I stayed steady on it. I feel like God told me, and again, this is just what I felt like. I didn't hear an audible voice. It's like, don't mark any days or years of your sobriety. And it was just, to me, that was one of the best pieces of advice. Sarah was the one that's like, occasionally after a year or so, she would be like, oh, good job, you didn't mess up. And it was really nice to not label that. So again, I believe that she did what she always did. She served God. Whether she was there or there, she served him. Even in a bad time, she still served him. And I know this because if you go to 2 Kings 8:3, just a page or two down there, at the end of the 7 years, the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to appeal to the king for her house. And this is the awesome part. You talk about timing and God. So the king was talking to the servant of Elijah, Gehazi, and they were talking about this woman. She went to appeal to them. Again, this woman, has no reference to her husband or anything. She came down there believing that they could get things right with her for 7 years of famine, so she's gone to appeal to the king. So if you go down to chapter 8:6, and when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed to her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was her and all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land, even until now. And again, this is going back to that analogy with the plow, and just me and anyone preaching should be going a little bit closer to the edge. Pastor's been talking about this is the year of restoration. I had no intentions of this flowing this way, but for 7 years she was able to get a return on her fields and all her businesses. 7 years. I don't know about you guys. If I got 7 years annually, and I'm sure she was making money over there too. So that's a huge restoration. And anytime you see anything in the Bible, as long as you're eligible and available, this applies to you. So if you lost something, she didn't do anything wrong with the famine. That had nothing to do with her, but God still restored her. And this is where it kind of flows into the soul part. Especially back then, people, women especially, if you didn't have a son, they took it as a real bad hurt. I mean, of course, anyone would, but especially women back then, that was a huge deal. So she obviously didn't have a child then, and what God was kind of getting me to is that she could have been extremely bitter, really sour to God specifically, because again, she's doing good. Why can't she have a child? But she didn't. She could have cursed the man of God, but she didn't. Instead, she did what she did, and she got the rewards. So this is kind of getting to the wrap-up point of this, which I love. So this is the soul. And God kind of gave me this outline pretty well. Has anyone ever heard the phrase, time heals all wounds? I mean, that is probably the furthest thing from the truth. I don't know how that got stuck. I don't know. Anyways, that's about as true as committing a crime than leaving the state. It's just going to get worse. You just got a little bit of distance from the problem. It's only going to grow. God told me that your soul is not like your body. Your body can heal on its own most of the time, but your soul cannot heal by itself. That's where you see mostly adults having childhood trauma. Now, as an adult, they might not have a whole bunch of things going wrong with them, but they still have those childhood traumas. They have no protection at that age. That's where parents come into play to really restrict any of those pains. But it cannot heal by itself. I do see where a lot of times when you get saved as a Christian and those who actually stick with the word, I've seen this stop anymore. But your soul requires God to heal that. I've actually been to therapists when I was in Maryland with my dad, trying to fix what was broken. Didn't work. Only God was able to heal my soul. And this is something I really want you guys to grab because it was given to me. I don't have a straight, internet, Wi-Fi, broadband. After this sermon, I really haven't had any other sermon ideas come necessarily. So this is really for you guys and me. I took it. God said to me that time in your soul is like a cloth, stretched out, and then as time comes, it will fold like an accordion. I was going to use the example, but then Sarah knew how to fold, so I didn't do that. So it's like an accordion of a cloth. And as you start to fold, if there's any saturated stains on there, it will bleed into the next fold, into the next fold, and the next fold, and it won't stop. I think there's something to be said about cloth a lot. In the Bible, it talks about, he'll wash you white as snow. Sometimes you'll see something good happen, and I believe that will stop some of the saturation. But if you don't, it will continue on to bleed. And that's where you get some of these people that has baggage. We call it baggage. I would call it stains in this scenario. I spent a lot of time in Isaiah 53, 4 through 5, and I would like you guys to go with me. I'll read it out. Surely he has borne our griefs, and this is amplified, so it gives you a whole paragraph for every word. Surely he has borne our grief, sicknesses, weaknesses, and distresses, and carried our sorrows and pains of punishment. Yet we ignorantly considered him stricken, smitten, and afflicted by God, as if with leprosy. So I know that we believe this is a healing of our body, but it with God it's always so much more. Surely he has borne our griefs, our weaknesses, and our distresses, and our sorrows and our pains. That's how you stop the bleed, your saturation. If you choose to just use this for healing, that's great. But this is for your soul. I've read this over and over and over, and then, at the time that I needed my soul healed, to not continue the saturated stain, this is what stopped it. We know the scriptures, your soul will prosper as your soul prospers. The Shunammite woman didn't let anything hurt her soul. So if you stay on these things, I just believe that, again, you just keep on growing and growing. I know, this is visual. I was standing right there, and Pastor came to me. He said that Jesus was going to heal my heart, and that the only thing that would be left there was a scar. I really didn't know how that would play out and how that would feel. I never had it before. I knew what I felt then, but it was completely different. He said there wouldn't be any more pain, there'd just be a scar. And what I feel like God was talking to me about is that this scar would be your memories that you would remember, but you wouldn't have the pain anymore. Paul said he doesn't remember all these things, and he did atrocities. He said, I remember these things. He's like, I'm fine. I'm good. I wronged no man. I'm sure there's a couple of people like, I remember he did Aunt Susie. No. I did ask God in my heart. I'm like, well, why leave the scars? I didn't even like looking at the scars. I didn't like the memories. And I feel like God told me, because I knew that he could take it all away. I know he could, because he does it for himself. He takes away all the things that we did. If you ask him sorry twice, he didn't know what you're talking about the second time. I asked him, why couldn't you do this all? He said so that way people could read them like Braille, of your experiences and of what he's done for us. So what I would like to tell you guys, don't hide your scars, use them for the glory of God. Get your heart healed, but don't hide your scars. I didn't realize how many people thought I had a decent life prior to, and it wasn't horrible by any means. But it's really interesting to find out when I would jokingly say something like, I didn't know you did that. And I'm glad that they didn't. But that is your testimony, whether you like it or not. And it's meant to help out, to glorify what God has done and will do for them too. So like I said, I can speak of my past, and it will no longer hurt. And I encourage you guys to get some of these things with God, because I know that he can heal your heart. And if he sees it, especially your family members, again, we're really inquiring God of how we can get our family members. And I believe when he sees someone restored after all the things that maybe we did or happened to us, it's the best testimony. You don't have to say anything. I feel like half the time we mess it up when we talk. So I know it's probably a shorter message, but it's also 8 degrees, so I can use that as an excuse.